Good evening, wanderer. Welcome back to the place where the night does not sleep and where fear does not fade but ripens. You have heard the tale of Elena Warren, the house she entered, the silence that swallowed her, and the hunger waiting within those rotting walls. But Harrow Creek has always held more than one story, more than one disappearance, more than one tragedy, whispered through clenched teeth by a town too afraid to speak aloud. Tonight, I will tell you the story of the witness, the only man who escaped the house, the only one who lived long enough to warn the town, the one who ran. Sit with me, here in the quiet, while the dark remembers. 3 days after Elena Warren vanished inside Harrow Creek house, an old man walked into the sheriff's station. He came barefoot, clothes layered in mismatched flannels and hand-me-down coats, beard tangled, streaked with mud, hands shaking from something deeper than cold. The deputies stared at him. "Alden Price?" one whispered. "He hasn't come into town in, 15 years? More like 20, the sheriff muttered. Alden Price was a name spoken often in Harrow Creek, but never loudly. He lived in a cabin deeper in the woods than most dared to go, alone, hiding from something no one understood. The sheriff approached him carefully. "Alden, what brings you here?" Alden raised his head slowly. His eyes were bloodshot, ringed with black circles, as if no sleep had touched him in years. He whispered, "I heard her." The sheriff frowned. "Who did you hear?" Alden's fingers twitched. He clenched them into a fist. "The girl," he said softly. "Your missing girl, Elena Warren." The sheriff stiffened. "We don't know she's dead yet." Alden shook his head violently. "Oh, she's not dead," he whispered. "Not yet. Not exactly." He stepped closer until the sheriff felt the man's icy breath. "She screamed," Alden said. "I heard her from my cabin, heard her begging." The sheriff swallowed. "Alden, your cabin is miles from that house." Alden's face twisted. "The house," he whispered, "doesn't need distance." They escorted Alden to a private room, sat him down, and placed a cup of hot water in front of him. He did not drink it. He didn't even touch it. He stared at the steam with hollow eyes. The sheriff sat across from him. "Tell me exactly what you heard." Alden spoke slowly, deliberately, like a man unspooling trauma thread by thread. "I was sitting on my porch," he said, "listening to the night like I always do. The woods were quiet, too quiet. Animals know things humans don't." He paused. "Then I heard breathing, but not like a person, not even like an animal." He closed his eyes, reliving it. "It was the house," Alden whispered. "It breathes, always has." The sheriff frowned. "Alden, we've been through this." "No," Alden snapped with sudden strength. "You haven't. You never believed me. You never listened." The sheriff leaned back, taken aback. Alden's hands shook so violently that the steam rippled. 53 years I've run from that place," he said. "And for 53 years, it followed me." The sheriff's voice softened. "Start from the beginning." Alden did, and it was worse than the sheriff remembered. Alden was 12 in 1971. A thin, quiet boy with scraped knees and big, observant eyes. And one best friend, Samuel McBride. Samuel was everything Alden wasn't. Bold, curious, a little reckless. He loved exploring the woods, climbing trees, and collecting strange things he found near the old house. "Let's go inside," Samuel said one afternoon. Alden shook his head. "No way. My dad says that place is cursed." Samuel laughed. "Your dad says lightning is God yelling." "He said that once," Alden mumbled. Samuel nudged him. "Come on. Don't be scared." But Alden was scared. Not of ghosts, but of the house itself. It wasn't the way it looked, though its peeling paint and broken shutters always made it seem like it was frowning. It wasn't the way trees died around it, though the ground inside the gate was gray and brittle, just like today. It was the way it felt, as if the house was watching, listening, thinking. Even at 12, Alden sensed it. That house wanted something, and it was patient. About 2 weeks before the McBride family disappeared, Samuel began acting strange. He started wandering off alone, talking less, sleeping less. One day, Alden found him sitting in front of the Harrow Creek house, staring at the upstairs window. "Samuel?" Alden called. "What are you doing?" Samuel barely glanced at him. "She's awake," he whispered. Alden frowned. "Who?" Samuel lifted a trembling finger toward the house. "She is." Alden followed Samuel's gaze. The upstairs window curtain fluttered, even though there was no wind. A shadow passed behind it. Alden gasped. "Was that your mom?" Samuel shook his head. "She said not to bring anyone, but she's lonely." Alden's stomach twisted. "Who's lonely?" Samuel smiled strangely. "The lady upstairs." It was storming the night Samuel vanished. Rain hammered the rooftops. Thunder rolled across the valley. Alden couldn't sleep. Something felt wrong. At 1:23 a.m., he heard tapping on his bedroom window. He got up, shivering, and opened the curtains. Samuel stood outside in the rain, his nightshirt plastered to his skin, his eyes wide and unfocused, his bare feet muddy. Alden opened the window. "Samuel, what are you doing?" Samuel lifted his head slowly. "She wants us to come back," he said. "She's waiting." Alden shook his head. "No, it's the middle of the night." Samuel stepped closer. Closer than any normal person should be able to move in that time. "She's cold," he whispered. "She's been cold for so long." Alden slammed the window shut. Samuel's face twitched. He tilted his head, then turned and vanished into the storm. An hour later, the McBride house lights snapped on. Every light in the house, all at once. That hadn't happened in 10 years. Alden watched from his window. He saw shadows moving behind the illuminated curtains. Many shadows. Too many. He screamed for his parents. By the next morning, the McBride family was gone. Completely gone. And only Alden knew the truth. The house had taken them, and Samuel had gone willingly. In the sheriff's office, Alden finished speaking. His hands trembled so violently they rattled the table. The sheriff whispered, "Alden, why didn't you tell anyone this before?" Alden looked up at him with hollow eyes. "I did," he said softly. "For years, but no one believed me." The sheriff rubbed his face. "And why come forward now?" Alden leaned in. "Because she's calling again." "Who?" Alden's voice dropped to a whisper. "The lady upstairs. The same one who took Samuel, the same one who took the McBrides, and now," he paused, "now she has Elena." The sheriff stood abruptly, knocking over his chair. He shouted to the deputies, "Get your gear. We're going back to Harrow Creek house." Alden grabbed his arm. "No," he whispered. "Stop. You shouldn't have waited this long." The sheriff narrowed his eyes. "What do you mean?" Alden's lips trembled. "She's awake." The sheriff's SUV rolled down Harrow Creek Road at dusk, rattling over cracked pavement worn thin by decades of storms. The deeper they traveled, the more the forest closed in around them. Branches arched overhead like a ribcage. The smell of earth grew damp and heavy, as if the forest had been holding its breath, waiting for someone foolish enough to enter. Alden sat in the back seat, trembling violently. "You should have come in daylight," he whispered. "The house sleeps in daylight." Deputy Hayes glanced at him in the rearview mirror. "Are you saying it wakes at night?" Alden shook his head, eyes glued to the road ahead. "No," he said softly. "It wakes when it's hungry." The sheriff tightened his grip on the steering wheel. "I don't believe in haunted houses," he muttered. Alden leaned forward, his voice cracking. "Sheriff? It's not haunted. Haunted things are dead." The sheriff swallowed. "And the house?" Alden whispered. "It's alive." They reached the rusted iron gate. It hung open. No wind moved it. No animals pushed it. It simply stood open as though expecting them. Alden refused to get out of the car. He gripped the headrest with white knuckles. "I won't cross that line," he whispered. "It remembers me." The sheriff and the two deputies stepped out with flashlights, boots crunching dead grass. The ground inside the gate felt different, denser, colder, as if life had been drained from the soil. Deputy Hayes bent down and touched the grass. It crumbled into ash. A small gust of air rose from the earth, warm, almost like breath. The sheriff took a step back. "Did you feel that?" Hayes nodded slowly, like something exhaled. Alden shouted from the car, "Leave now! It knows you're here!" But the sheriff ignored him. He walked through the gate first, and the moment his boot touched the porch steps, the house groaned, long, low, as if shifting its weight. Deputy Morgan whispered, "Is it settling?" Alden shook his head frantically. "No, it's waking up." The front door stood slightly ajar. The sheriff frowned. "We boarded that shut after the McBride case." Morgan lifted his flashlight. "There's no board, sir." The sheriff pushed the door gently. It opened with unnatural smoothness, silent, obedient. A warm draft blew out of the house, brushing their faces like a slow, deliberate breath. Hayes whispered, "Sheriff, no abandoned house should feel warm inside." Alden shouted from the car, "Don't touch the air. It smells you." The sheriff glanced back but stepped inside anyway. It was dark, thick dark, the kind of dark that feels like it has weight, like it sinks into your lungs when you breathe. The house smelled of something old, not rot, not dust, something deeper, older than wood or age or decay. "The hell is that smell?" Morgan whispered. Alden whispered from the porch, "It's the house." The living room looked cleaner than an abandoned home should. Furniture covered in white sheets. Dust on the floor, but lightly, gently disturbed, as if something had moved through recently. The deputies scanned the room with flashlights. "That chair," Hayes murmured. "The sheet. It's warm." The sheriff turned sharply. "What?" Hayes pressed his palm against the sheet. His breath hitched. "It's warm, sir. Like someone was sitting here." Morgan pointed at the floor. "Look, footsteps." Indeed, faint impressions curved through the dust, but the footprints were wrong, too long, too narrow, and they pointed the wrong direction, not toward the room, but toward the door as if something had stood behind it, watching, waiting. Alden's voice floated through the doorway. "Don't follow the footprints. They're not hers." The sheriff swallowed. "You think Elena's alive?" Alden didn't answer at first. Then he whispered, "She's here. But she isn't alive." A crack echoed overhead. The sheriff pointed his flashlight at the staircase. The top step was shifting, just slightly, like someone was moving their weight from foot to foot. The deputies raised their firearms instinctively. Hayes whispered, "There's someone upstairs." Alden grabbed the door frame, shaking violently. "Don't go up. Don't climb her stairs." "Her?" Morgan asked. Alden nodded. "She rules the upper floor. She always has." The sheriff ignored him. "Elena, if you can hear me, call out." Silence, then creak. Another footstep, then another. Slow, deliberate, almost rhythmic. Alden pressed his back against the porch railing. "That's not her. That's the upstairs lady." The sheriff hesitated. "Who is she?" Alden closed his eyes. "The one Samuel followed." Hayes flicked on his shoulder cam. "You taking the lead, sir?" The sheriff nodded. "Stay behind me." They began climbing. Each step groaned under their weight, but not from age. It felt like the house was reacting, like it was aware, like it was adjusting itself for them. Halfway up, the sheriff froze. Something moved in the upstairs hallway. A face, pale, small. At first glance, it looked like a teenage girl, but the light shifted, and the face changed. The eyes were hollow, sunken, too deep in the skull. The mouth hung open slightly, as if stuck mid-whisper. Deputy Morgan gasped. "Is that Elena?" Alden's scream shattered the silence. "Get out of there!" The sheriff lifted his flashlight toward the figure, but it didn't run. It didn't hide. It simply leaned forward slightly as if studying them. Then its head jerked violently to the side, and it whispered, "He remembers." Alden ran inside despite his terror, grabbing the sheriff's coat. "Don't climb another step. Don't go up there." The sheriff shoved him back. "You said she has Elena." Alden's voice cracked in anguish. "That's not Elena," Morgan shouted from halfway up. "Then what the hell is it?" Alden's breath came in broken stutters. "It's what the house uses to lure more victims. It mimics them like a puppet made of memory." Hayes whispered, "Sir, look." The figure at the top of the stairs began to twitch. Its neck snapped sharply to one side. Its arm bent at a grotesque angle. Its jaw unhinged slightly. Then it stepped forward, one foot, then the other. But its feet didn't make contact with the floor. It floated just an inch above the wood. Alden covered his face. "She's using Elena's image, just like she used Samuel's." Morgan's flashlight trembled. "What's she trying to do?" Alden whispered. "She wants you to follow her." The sheriff stepped back down the stairs. "Everyone retreat, now." But the house groaned again, longer this time. The front door slammed shut with a violent crack behind them. Alden cried out, "No, no, no, she's keeping you in!" The lights flickered overhead. The air grew thicker, harder to breathe. Dust swirled upward like ash in reverse. The thing at the top of the stairs grinned, slowly, unnaturally, stretching Elena's face into something wrong, something impossible. Then it whispered, "Come back up, Sheriff." The sheriff froze. Hayes whispered, "How does it know your name?" Alden sank to the floor. "Because she remembers everyone who's ever entered this house, every scream, every breath, every footstep." Morgan's voice cracked. "What does she want from us?" Alden shook his head slowly. "She doesn't want you." He pointed toward the sheriff. "She wants him." The sheriff swallowed hard. "Why me?" Alden whispered the answer. "Because you were the last one to investigate the McBride case." The sheriff's face paled. Alden continued, "And you saw something that night, didn't you?" The sheriff didn't answer. He didn't have to, because the house whispered it for him. He ran. The deputies turned to him in shock. The sheriff whispered, "No." The house repeated louder. He ran. The lights went out. Darkness swallowed the house whole, not the kind of darkness that comes from a blown fuse or a shadow passing overhead. This was deeper, thicker, as if the house itself inhaled all remaining light and held it in its lungs. Deputy Hayes fumbled with his flashlight. Sir, I can't see." A click, then another, then another. Flashlights flicked on one by one. But something was wrong. The beams didn't reach far. The darkness seemed to push back against them, swallowing most of the light before it touched the walls. Alden pressed himself flat against the wall, gasping. "It's begun," he whispered. "She's closing the house." Morgan turned sharply. "What does that even mean?" Alden squeezed his eyes shut. "It means she's decided who she wants." All three lights focused simultaneously on the sheriff. The sheriff stood frozen on the stairs, cheeks turning white under the pale beams of light. He looked down at the floorboards, anywhere but at his deputies. Morgan stepped closer. "What does the house mean?" "You ran?" The sheriff didn't answer. Hayes whispered shakily. "Sir, you said no one survived the McBride investigation." Alden's voice cracked as he answered for him. "Someone did." All three men turned toward Alden. He stared straight into the sheriff's eyes. "Tell them," Alden croaked. "They deserve to know." The sheriff closed his eyes, his shoulders dropped. "I didn't see the McBrides that night," he whispered. "I saw something else." Hayes swallowed. "Sir, what did you see?" The sheriff spoke slowly, as though each word dragged itself out of his chest with claws. It was the last night of the storm. Rain was coming down in sheets. The power was out across half the county. He took a shaky breath. "We got a call from the McBride house. A woman screaming, a man shouting for help, a child crying." Hayes' eyes widened. "You told us the house was silent when you arrived." The sheriff shook his head. "It wasn't." The house creaked softly under their feet as if leaning closer to hear. The sheriff continued. "When I pushed the door open, the living room light was flickering, on and off, on and off. The bulbs weren't even connected to power." Alden whispered, "She wakes the house when she's feeding." The sheriff ignored him. "The first thing I saw was little Emma McBride's teddy bear lying on the floor." He pointed at the couch. "And then I saw the mother's legs, just the legs. Her upper body was hidden behind the couch." Morgan's voice cracked. "Dead?" The sheriff shook his head slowly. "No, not dead." His hands trembled. "She was being held down by hands that weren't hers." A chill ripped through the room. Alden whispered through clenched teeth, "Don't describe them. Don't give shape to her helpers." The sheriff continued despite him. "They were long, too long, gray, but not like corpses, like wet paper stretched over bone." Hayes gagged. Morgan covered his mouth. A soft, dragging sound echoed overhead, as if something above them was listening and moving closer. The sheriff continued. "I heard the baby crying upstairs. I ran up the stairs, same stairs we're standing on now." He paused. The house creaked under his feet. "Halfway up, I saw something standing in the hallway, a small silhouette, short, thin, just tall enough to be a child." Morgan whispered, "The boy?" The sheriff shook his head. "No, it was facing me, and its eyes were open." He exhaled shakily. But they weren't real eyes, just black, sinking inward like holes punched into the face. Hayes backed up 2 steps. "Oh God." The sheriff's breathing grew ragged, and it beckoned me, like it knew me, like it wanted me to follow. The deputies trembled. Alden's voice cracked. "She likes to use the children." The sheriff's voice dropped to a whisper. "I followed the crying to the nursery." He looked down. "I wish I hadn't." Alden shook his head violently. "Stop. Once you remember it, she remembers you remembering." Morgan shouted at Alden. "You keep talking like the house listens." Alden stared back with hollow eyes. "Because it does." The sheriff spoke anyway. "When I entered the nursery, the baby was in the crib, but she wasn't crying anymore." The deputies waited. The sheriff continued. "She was staring up at something on the ceiling." Hayes whispered, "What was it?" The sheriff swallowed. "It was her, the upstairs lady." Morgan's light flickered. She was crawling across the ceiling, arms and legs bent the wrong way, head completely backward. He closed his eyes, and when she looked down at me, her face was... A sudden slam echoed from upstairs. All three men flinched hard. The sheriff stopped mid-sentence. Alden whispered, "She heard you." The sheriff's breathing became loud and uneven. "I ran," he whispered. Morgan stared at him. "You left the baby?" The sheriff shook his head violently. "No, I tried to grab her. But the crib closed itself." Hayes frowned. "Closed itself?" The sheriff nodded. The bars slid together like metal teeth. The deputy stared in horror. Alden whispered, "She doesn't let her meals leave." The sheriff continued, "I ran down the stairs, ran past the parents, past the kitchen, out the front door." He paused, then whispered, "And the screaming stopped the moment I stepped outside." Alden shook his head. "You escaped because you didn't look back." Morgan swallowed. "And the McBride family?" Alden answered. "She kept them all." Hayes whispered, "And now she wants you." The house creaked overhead, louder, as if confirming it. Suddenly, the floor beneath Morgan's bootboard dipped, just the slightest bend. He yelped. Did the floor just move? Alden grabbed the sheriff's sleeve. "She's shifting the layout, she's rearranging the house." Hayes turned in a panic. "What does that mean?" Alden whispered. "She doesn't want the sheriff to leave this time." The lights flickered. The figure at the top of the stairs twitched. Then it whispered, "Come back up. You didn't finish." The sheriff backed down 2 steps, hand trembling over his holster. Alden covered his ears. "Don't listen to her. She wants you alone. She feeds best when you're alone." Morgan whispered through clenched teeth. "What does she feed on?" Alden shook his head slowly. "Fear and guilt, and the moment when you realize you can't run anymore." The sheriff swallowed. "That's why she mimicked the McBride kids, why she mimicked Elena." Alden nodded. "And why she's mimicking something else upstairs now." Hayes whispered, "What's she mimicking?" Alden's voice cracked. "Your memories, your deepest fear." Morgan pointed upward, trembling. "Sir, look." The figure upstairs leaned forward, closer into the light. Now it had Samuel's smile, Elena's hair, the McBride mother's hands, a shifting patchwork of every victim. Alden screamed, "She's wearing them! All of them!" The house shook, wood groaned, dust rained from the ceiling. Morgan pointed his light at the staircase. No. The stairs were stretching. The top step pulled upward, the bottom step reached downward, like a spine elongating. Hayes gasped. "It's reshaping itself." Alden pressed himself to the wall. "She's making sure once you go up, you'll never reach the bottom again." The sheriff shook his head. "We're leaving. Now." They turned for the front door. It was gone. The sheriff reached the front wall and froze. The door they had come through, was simply not there anymore. No frame, no hinges, no outline, only smooth, aged wallpaper stretching from one corner to the other like the wall had never known an opening. Morgan stepped forward, pounding his fists against it. No, this was the door. I touched it. I saw it." Hayes joined him, slamming his shoulder into the wall. "It's solid, sir. Each impact made the wall ripple slightly. Not like wood, like flesh." Alden grabbed the sheriff's coat. "You have to stay calm. She's focusing on you. The house won't show an exit until it's done with you." The sheriff's jaw clenched. "Then we make an exit." He pulled out his sidearm and fired a round into the wall. The gunshot echoed through the house like thunder, but instead of splintering, the wall absorbed the bullet. A small circular ripple spread outward, quivering like gelatin, then faded. Hayes backed away in horror. What the hell? What is this place?" Alden whispered hoarsely. "It's not a place." He turned slowly. "It's a creature." The floorboards beneath their feet shifted, not creaked, moved, like something enormous turning in its sleep beneath the wooden planks. Morgan gasped and stumbled backward. "It's moving! It's moving!" The boards rippled like waves across a lake. The sheriff grabbed his deputies. "Move back! Stay together! Do not fall!" But the floor surged like a tide. Hayes slipped. Morgan caught his arm. The sheriff lunged forward and helped haul him upright. The floor steadied, but only for a moment. Then the entire hallway ahead began to retract, shrinking into darkness like a throat closing. Alden trembled. "She's hurting you. Don't let her isolate you." Morgan whispered, "Sir, we have to go upstairs." Alden shook violently. "No, no, she wants him upstairs. That's her room, her feeding ground." Hayes whispered, "Then what do we do?" The sheriff stared at the stairs. He didn't want to answer, but the house answered for him. A woman's whisper drifted down from the landing. "You left me." Alden screamed, "Don't listen, it's not her." But it was too late. The voice was unmistakable. The sheriff's face drained of color, because that voice belonged to someone he hadn't told anyone about. Not even Alden, not even his deputies, his wife. Morgan stared. "Sir, whose voice is that?" The sheriff shook. "No, it can't be. It can't." Alden closed his eyes. "She found something in you." Hayes whispered, "What is she talking about?" The sheriff's voice cracked. "My wife," he said. She wasn't just sick. She didn't just pass away peacefully at home like everyone believed." He swallowed hard. "She died in the McBride house." The deputies froze. Alden looked at him with a kind of sorrow that only another survivor could understand. The sheriff continued, voice trembling. "She was an investigator, too, back then. She came with me that night." He stared up the stairs. "She was the first to run ahead of me. I told her to stop. I told her to stay close." His voice broke. "But she went upstairs, alone, and I never saw her again." The house groaned softly, like remembering the moment. Alden whispered, "She remembers the ones who screamed the loudest." The sheriff clenched his fists. "I never told anyone. I said she died in her sleep. I lied." The voice upstairs whispered again, "You left me there." Hayes backed up. "That voice, sir, that sounds exactly like—" "Yes," the sheriff whispered. "It's her." Alden grabbed his coat again. "That's what she does. She wears the dead. She wears their voices." But the sheriff stepped forward. "I have to see her." A sudden bang echoed from the far end of the hallway. Hayes spun around. "Sir, something's moving behind us." Morgan shined his light. A shadow slid across the far wall. Tall, wrongly shaped, limbs too long, torso too thin. It crawled, not with arms and legs, but with its entire body pulling itself along the wall like a spider. Morgan screamed, "Move! Move now!" The sheriff grabbed both deputies. "Back up the stairs, go!" But as they rushed toward the steps, the stairway warped. The bottom 3 steps flattened, rising like a tongue blocking a throat. Hayes stumbled. Morgan tripped. The shadow skittered across the wall with horrifying speed, its limbs cracking like snapping twigs. A cold hand shot out from the wall and wrapped around Morgan's ankle. He shrieked, "Help! Help me!" The sheriff grabbed him, pulling with all his strength. Another hand emerged, and another, gray, wet, elongated. They wrapped around Morgan's leg, his waist, his arms. Hayes screamed, "Get him out! Get him!" The sheriff pulled harder, but the wall sucked Morgan into it, like quicksand made of flesh. Morgan's scream cut off abruptly as he disappeared beneath the wallpaper. A faint ripple spread over the surface, then nothing. Hayes collapsed, sobbing. Oh God, please, please!" Alden whispered, "She ate him." The sheriff stood frozen. Hayes trembled like a leaf. "We're dead, we're dead, we're dead." Alden shook him. She wants the sheriff. She always wanted him. She took his wife 30 years ago. She wants to finish the feast. The sheriff stared up the stairs. The warped steps unfolded again, slowly, like the house was revealing a path. Alden grabbed the sheriff's arm. If you go up there, she'll take you. The sheriff exhaled. If I don't, she'll take us all. Hayes sobbed. Sir, you can't. The sheriff turned to him. The sheriff turned to him. Hayes, listen to me. The moment that wall moves again, you run. Hayes shook his head violently. I won't leave you. That's an order, the house whispered. Come up. The sheriff took the first step, then another. The house didn't resist, because it wanted him. The upstairs hallway was long, much longer than before. The house had stretched it like taffy. Doors lined the hall on both sides. Every door was cracked open, barely a finger's width, as though something had passed through them recently. The sheriff lifted his flashlight. The beam flickered just once before stabilizing. At the far, far end of the hallway stood a woman, not Elena, not Samuel, at least not fully. Her body was wrong. Her spine arched too sharply. Her arms hung too low. Her skin was gray and tight. But her face was a collage of every victim. Elena's left eye, Samuel's right, Mrs. McBride's lips, and the sheriff's wife's cheekbones. She smiled, a wide, unnatural smile that stretched too far. Sheriff, she whispered. Her voice was layered, multiple voices speaking at once. Elena's voice inside it, Samuel's, Mrs. McBride's, his wife's. You came back. The sheriff's vision blurred with tears. What are you? She tilted her head. I was the first, she whispered. The first to starve in this house. Her neck cracked. The house kept me alive. It keeps all of us alive, forever hungry, forever cold. The sheriff trembled. You killed them, he whispered. You took my wife. The creature laughed softly. The house took them. The house takes everyone. I only wear them. She stepped closer. Alden screamed below, Don't let her touch you! But the sheriff didn't run. He raised his flashlight. Where is Elena? The creature blinked. It's too late for that. The sheriff gritted his teeth. Where is she? The creature smiled wider. She's in the house. She's part of me now. A cold wind burst down the hallway. Something shifted behind the creature. A shape. A small shape. A girl's silhouette. Elena Warren. Her face empty. Her eyes black. Her mouth slightly open. The sheriff stepped forward. Elena? She tilted her head. Her voice came out in a whisper. Don't help us. The sheriff reached toward her. Alden screamed. She's using the girl to pull you closer. Stop! The upstairs lady lunged. Her arms stretched unnaturally long, her fingers hooked like claws. The sheriff fired. 1 shot, 2 shots, 3. The creature flinched, but did not fall. Instead, the bullet sank into her and vanished. The sheriff stumbled backward. Alden shouted, You can't fight her with guns. You have to find her heart. The sheriff glared. What heart? Alden pointed to the floor. The heart of the house. The room where she died. The room where the house was born. The sheriff shouted up the stairs. Where is it? The creature smiled. And every door in the upstairs hallway creaked fully open. She whispered, Choose. The sheriff stepped into the nearest door. Empty room. Dust. Rot. Silence. Next door empty. Next empty. The house shifted behind him. Floorboards creaked. Hallway distorted. The creature crawled across the ceiling, following him upside down. He reached the last door. A faint light flickered under it. He pushed it open. Inside was a small, decayed bedroom. A woman's dress hung over a broken chair. Children's drawings lined the wall. A collapsed bed sat in the corner. A small wooden chest lay open on the floor. Inside, a locket. He picked it up. Inside the locket was a picture. The sheriff's breath froze. A mother, a father, 2 children, the McBride family. Alden whispered behind him, "This is where she died." A shadow rose from the bed. The upstairs lady stepped into the room, her shape twisted, bones cracking. Her face softened just for a moment, and she spoke in a single, solitary voice, her own. "Help me." The sheriff froze. "You were human," she nodded. "I was the first mother starved by this house. My children died in these walls. My husband took his own life downstairs," she trembled, "and the house would not let us leave." Her voice turned sharp. "And now we belong to it," the sheriff whispered. "What do you want from me?" She lifted her hand. "To take your place." The sheriff raised the locket. The creature hissed. The room shook violently. Alden shouted, "The locket is her memory. It's all she has left. Destroy it!" The sheriff hesitated. "But it's her family," Alden screamed. "They're gone! The house is using their memory to keep her here." The creature lunged. The sheriff closed his eyes and crushed the locket under his boot. The house shrieked, not the creature, the entire house. Walls bent inward, floorboards buckled, windows shattered, dust blasted upward in a tornado of screams. The creature convulsed, dropping to her knees. Her face flickered, Elena's, Samuel's, the sheriff's wife's, the McBride's, dozens of faces, dozens of deaths, dozens of memories. And then her true face appeared. A tired, broken mother. "Thank you," she whispered. Then she dissolved into dust. The house shuddered violently. Alden grabbed the sheriff. "Run! Run now!" The upstairs collapsed behind them. The walls cracked open. Hayes screamed from below, "Sir, the door! The door is back!" The sheriff and Alden barreled down the stairs. The front door was there, wide open. Hayes pulled them through. They sprinted to the yard. The house roared like an animal denied its prey. And then, silence. The sheriff, Alden, and Hayes collapsed outside the gate. The sheriff stared at the house. Its windows were now dark. Its roof sagged. The upstairs lady was gone. Alden whispered, "You broke her hold." Hayes sobbed. "Did we win? Did we destroy it?" Alden shook his head slowly. "No." He pointed at the house. "It's still alive. It just lost one of its mouths." The sheriff stared. "And the others?" Alden whispered. "They're still inside." The sheriff stepped toward the road. Hayes called out, "Sir, what now?" The sheriff whispered, "We bury the truth, or the town will lose its mind." Alden nodded. "The house won't attack again for a long time. She fed on us tonight. She'll sleep." Hayes trembled. "But Elena, Morgan, your wife." The sheriff closed his eyes. "They're gone." A cold wind blew through the trees. The sheriff turned his back on the house. But the house watched them leave. Its upstairs curtain shifted softly, as if something was already rising to replace the lady they freed. A new face, a new hunger. And so, Wanderer, the witness spoke, the sheriff confessed, and the upstairs lady was freed from her prison of grief. But Harrow Creek House is not done. It never is. A house that feeds does not rest. It waits. And the faces it wears are never the same for long. Join me again for episode 3. If you dare, I am the Nightmare Maiden, and the dark remembers.